Hi again. Let's continue our to-do videos here. And in the last video we made the view controller and we added the to-do object here. And now our array is containing to-do objects, and we're displaying the to-do objects and their name and note feature in our table view. Okay. So, that works pretty good for our to-do, our to-do app here. But the problem is, we probably want to be able to add new to-do items, right? Like foo and bar doesn't make a very good reminder for something, right? So what do we want to do here? We want to create a system to add new items. So if we can add a new to-do item here to the array, then it should show up in our list. So for example, if I wanted to add a new item here, I could say new, like buy milk or something, right? And maybe I'll put the note will be like shopping, something like that, right? So if I test that, now I got a new item, but I want to do that through my program, right? So I want to create some way to add new items here. So let's start on that, okay? So first things first, let's go to storyboard. And what I want to do is I want to have another view controller that will have a form that lets me create a new to-do item, okay? So I'll go to storyboard here, and I'm going to grab a new UI view controller and drag it into the scene here. And maybe I'll set the size of it to be a little smaller, like this. There's my new view. And then I'll go to the first view, and I want to create some navigation between these views. So in the first view, I'm going to select it so it's got the blue outline. And then I'll go to the editor menu and choose Embed in Navigation Controller. Okay, and let me change the size of the navigation controller thing and move it around a little bit here. Okay, so there we go. So there's my navigation controller. There's our first table view that we were working with, and then there's our new view. Okay, and now you can see I've got this nav bar at the top. So that should push our table view down so that it's no longer running into the status bar. Okay, so now we want to create some navigation. Like, how do I get from here over to here? So I'm going to go into the object library here and find the bar button item. Okay, so this is UI bar button item. Okay, UI bar button item. And I'm going to drag one of these out and put it on the nav bar here. Okay, so I'll put it on the left or the right side. And, you can click on this item right there. And the bar button item can have a style, and it can have an identifier. And the identifier determines like what it looks like. You can also make it custom, and then you can set the label to be anything you want. So right now the label says item, but maybe I'll go to custom and I'll choose add, and then that'll give me the little plus sign. You can also use an image if you like. Okay? So I'll save that. And what I want to do is I want to connect this plus button, so when you tap it, it takes us to the second view. So I'll hold the control key and then control drag from the button to the new view. And then I'll choose a show Segway for now. We might change this to a modal Segway in the future, and I'll talk about why but later. But for right now, we'll just use the show Segway. Okay, it'll just keep things simple. So so there's our view, and we can test that. And there's my button, and when I tap it, oh, there's my new view, and then I can click the back button, and I'm back to the original view. So that works pretty good. And now what I want to do is in here, I want to have a text field here that lets you add a new note. Okay, so this is actually going to be the name of the to-do item, and maybe I'll add a second text field here, that will be the note, okay? And maybe I'll give this some constraints. So maybe I'll select both of these guys and choose align in horizontal center, right? So now they should be aligned there, and then maybe, you know, on both of them, I'll go to the other button here and I'll say, distance to left, right? Distance to left and right, and then I'll check height also. So I'm just trying to do as many constraints as possible. So I got these guys are almost done, and then maybe I'll do distance to top, and then this one will be distance to its neighbor, vertical spacing, right? Okay, so now I got some constraints there. So when we go to this view, my text fields should kind of fill the view there. So that looks pretty good. So the next bit, I'm going to select this first guy here, the first text field, and the placeholder text, maybe this is going to be the name of a to-do item. So I'll put the name there. And then underneath it, this will be the note. So I'll type in note, okay? And then the placeholder text appears here, right? So that looks pretty good. And you could modify this further. You can set the font and the border style and the background and whatnot, right? But we'll just leave it like that for now. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So now how do we get, the to-do item, like when I go in here, how do I get that to, add a new to-do in the other view controller? So let's talk about that for a minute. So when you're starting in this view controller here, that's, viewcontroller.swift. And in view controller Swift, we've defined the array that contains all the to-do items. So when we go to this view controller, this guy's not really aware of what's going on over here, right, in the other view. Plus, the when we travel from one view to the next, this view doesn't really have a reference to the other view. Okay, so essentially, like when we go from view controller to the add view, right, what's going to happen is we're going to be here, and our script knows that we're here, and the navigation controller knows we're here. But when we tap the plus button, we've created a new view, and we go to this view, but this view is unaware of the view where it came from. Okay? So that makes it difficult for this guy to send information back. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new view controller file for this new view. Okay? So that's our first step here. So I'll go to Command N to make a new Swift file here. I'll do it on the menu. New file, and I'll go to iOS, and this time what I'm going to choose is I'm going to choose a Cocoa Touch class, okay? And I'll click Next, and what I want to do is I want to make a subclass of UI View Controller. So this is kind of like we're making a new copy of this View Controller Swift, except we're going to assign it to the new view. And why don't we call this Add To-Do View Controller, okay? So I'll click Next, and then we'll save this file into our folder with our project, right? Maybe I'll move it up here underneath the view controller. And now what we need to do is we need to assign this new view controller class to this new view. So I'll click on the views. It has to have the blue outline. And then I'll go to the Identity Inspector. And under the Identity Inspector, there's a field called Class here. And I'll start typing Add To-Do View Controller, and then when I see the name pop up there, I'll hit Return. So now this view is now tied to this View Controller class, okay? So I'm going to switch to the View Controller class, and what I want to do is create some IB outlets, okay, for our text fields, okay? So I'll click Option here on the storyboard to open up the assistant editor, and here's my view, and then here's the Add To Do View Controller. Okay, so I made a little space here inside the top of the class, And what I want to do is I want to use the control key and click and drag from the text field into the view. So this is the name text field. So I'll call that name text, and it'll be an IB outlet. And then I'll do the same thing for note. Okay, so I'll type in note text, and it'll be an IB outlet. Okay. And so that's pretty good. Let's do some more stuff here, right? So that looks pretty good. So now we can get the value from these two text fields, but how will we know if you're going to save a note? Now we could put a button in here to save, and that would work too. I think I'm going to put a button in the bar up here at the top. It'll say save, right? So when you type in the values for your to-do item, you can click save, and then it'll take us back to the next screen and hopefully create a new to-do item. And we'll have the back button here, so if you don't hit save, you can just hit back if you want to cancel. Okay? So how do we add a button up here? Well, remember in the last view we used the UI bar button item, so we're going to do that again. Okay? So here's a UI bar button item. And when I drag it in there, you'll see it doesn't want to let me put the button there. Okay, so this is the thing. We've got the navigation controller here, but it shows, but it isn't really, we don't really have a navigation item there. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this navigation item. So this is a UI navigation item, right? So we'll grab UI navigation item, and we'll drop it in there, and then it comes with a title, and you could change this. You could do add to do or whatever you want to put in there. And now that we have the navigation item, we can use the UI bar button item. So now when I drag this, it'll let me put an item in the corner there. So maybe I'll click on this item here, and I'll set the identifier here to save. Right? So we'll save the to-do item, and then that'll create a new one, hopefully. Right? So we'll save our work here while we're working, right? And what I want to do is I want to create an action for this button. So I want the button to have an action when we tap on it. I want to be able to execute some code. So I'll use the control key. So I'm holding the control key. I'm going to drag from the save button over to our class again, our add to do view controller. And I'll switch the connection type to action. And then I'll say save button tapped. Okay? And you can set the type here. For our case, it probably won't matter if this says any object, but I'm going to switch it to UI bar button item. And then click connect. Now the key thing here is it's got to be action, okay, this time. And then you can see the action different from the IB outlet in that it's a function where the IB outlet is just a variable, okay, a var. Okay, so we're doing pretty good there. Let's exit the assistant editor, and then let's put a couple comments in here. I like to do this, mark IB outlets. And then down here, I'm going to do mark colon IB actions, right? And this mark thing, maybe I'll do it again down here. I'll say, mark colon view life cycle methods or something, right? And the mark, what it does is when we're on the menu here, you can see these little headings pop up, right? And that's what the mark does, is it adds that heading. So it says IB outlets, IB actions, life cycle methods, right? So that's kind of good for us. Kind of organizes our code. Okay, so we're pretty good there. What else do we need to do here? Let me save all this too while we've got everything kind of working, right? So what are we going to do? Well, what I want to do here is I want when you add a new to-do item, right? This class is going to call on a method in another class. So when you tap the save button, what I want to do is I want to call on, add to-do item or add new to-do in another class, okay? in our delegate, so to speak. So what I'm going to do is at the top of the Add To Do item controller, right, I'm going to type in protocol, and then I'm going to say Add To Do View Controller Delegate. Okay? So this class is saying like, hey, you know, anybody that wants to work with me and be my delegate has to implement my protocol. So my protocol is going to be called Add New To Do Item, which is going to be a type to do item. Okay? So I got some error here. What's my error here? Oh, you know, I didn't put func in front of that. There we go. There we go, right? So here, anybody that wants to be a delegate for Add To Do View Controller needs to implement a function called Add New To Do. Okay? And so that function has to take a to-do item as a parameter or argument, and it, you know, it's going to be to-do item type, right? Okay. So let's also do this. Let's define a delegate. Okay? So I'm going to type in var delegate, and our delegate is an Add To Do View Controller delegate. And we got to put the exclamation point there at the end because this hasn't been set, so it might be nil, right? So we're saying like, hey, this is an optional, might be nil, might have a value, okay? So there we go. Delegate is this guy right here. So now this class, you know, what it really wants to do is it wants to talk to its delegate and say, hey, you know, let's add a new to-do item. And you can see that since the delegate is an Add To Do View Controller delegate, when I start, well, let me type that again, right? You know, when I start typing this, you can see it knows that the delegate has this method. Like the delegate has to have that method, so it code hints that for me, right? Okay, so now we want to put a new to-do item here, right? So why don't we just call that to-do, right? And then what I'll do is I'll make the new to-do here. I'll say, you know, let to-do equal to-do item, and to-do items can have a string and for name and a string for note. So for the note or the name string is going to be name text dot text, right? So, you know, we're going to the name text field and we're getting its text property, and that should be the value that you typed into the field. And then the note is going to be the note text dot text. Okay? And then we'll just add that new to-do item here. Okay? So there we go. So now we got that done, right? So now we actually have to add the to-do item to the array, and that's going to happen in View Controller, right? So let me save this. And when I go to View Controller, this class, you know, it needs to collaborate with the Add To Do View Controller, right? So what we're going to do is up here at the top again, like this class already collaborates with UI TableView and UI TableView, you know, data source and delegate, right? Let's add in Add To Do View Controller delegate. Okay, so it's also going to collaborate with that class. And then now I've got that error again, and it's going to say like, hey, this doesn't conform to the protocol because it doesn't have the, you know, the Add To Do method. Right, because our protocol over here says that, you know, anybody that wants to be our delegate needs to, or anybody that follows this protocol needs to have this method, right? So let's add that. Maybe I'll just put it up here at the top. We'll put a mark on it, right? Add To Do delegate, right? So we'll say add new, and then you can see now that we're the delegate, it code hints that for us. So we'll just hit return there. And then we're going to receive a to-do item from, you know, our delegate. And what I'll want to do is I'll want to say array dot append to do. Okay? And so that works pretty good. One little problem is we probably have to tell our table view to refresh, right? Because we've added a new item to the array, but maybe the table view cells need to redraw themselves, right? So what we'll do is we'll say, we'll need a reference to our table view, right? And then we'll have to say table view reload data, okay? So we need a reference to the table view. So we're going to do one more thing. In the storyboard here, we're talking about this view right here. Let's go get, actually let's do it this way. Let's get the view controller first, and then we'll option click on storyboard to open it up in the assistant editor. And what I want to do is I want to get the table view, and you can just control drag from the table view into the scene here, and we'll make an IB outlet for the table view. And we'll just call it table view like this. So I drag in there, right? Outlet, table view is type UI table view. And then it says, you know, IB outlet table view, right? Okay. So now we can say, you know, table view dot reload data. Okay. So now if we add a new to do and we come back to this view here, we'll refresh the data, and you know, hopefully it'll show the new view. Let's give it a try. So we'll test here, and there's all of our default stuff. Let's add a new new item. It'll be eat lunch. Actually, maybe we'll do it this way. We'll say eat lunch, burger, and fries as the note. Fires, wait, fries. There we go, right? And then we'll say save. Oh, and then I got an error. Unwrap. Optional. Let's see here. What am I missing here? What did I miss there? So, something, what did I do here? Let's take a quick look. So I got a to-do item there. I think it looks pretty good. Oh, completed is fault. No, that's fine, right? What am I missing here? Oh, you know what? I forgot to set the delegate. Sorry about that. Okay, so we got to do one more thing, right? I totally forgot to set the delegate. Sorry about that, right? So yeah, so that's actually a great example there, right? Yeah, where did delegate get its value, right? I put delegate up here, but I never set the value, right? So one more thing, right? Let's go back to our view controller here, right? And we need to assign the the delegate a value, and that means we have to know like who the view controller is that we're going to, right? So we can get to that guy and get his delegate property. So what I'm going to do is in the main view controller here, I'm going to add in another method here. Okay, and so here's my table view methods, and then there's my view lifecycle methods. Let's mark that too. So we'll say view lifecycle, right? Methods, right? Let's add another one here. So let's call this mark : navigation method, something like that, right? And what I want to do is here I want to say prepare for Segway. Okay, so I'm going to choose prepare for Segway from the menu there. Okay, and what this method does is it's called anytime one view is going to switch to another view. Okay, and it's going to say like, hey, we're ready to switch from one view to another, or we're going to essentially what it's saying is we're preparing to execute a Segway. Okay, and the Segway object describes the transition that's going to occur. Okay, in Storyboard, the segues are these little lines right here that connect the views together. Okay, and so this is the segue that we're going to perform. Okay, because you're tapping, or actually this is the segue that we perform to get to this view, and then the save button is going to take us back, right? So when we're going from here to this view, right, this segue is executed, and at that point we want to set the delegate in the Add To Do view to our view controller, our original view controller, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this segue here and give it an identifier, and I'll say Add To Do Segway. I'll copy the name because I'll need to type that again. So every segue can have an identifier. So we can, anytime, prepare for segue gets called, it's going to give us the segue, and that segue will have an identifier attached to it, so we'll know which segue it is, right? We can identify it, okay? So let's go back to our view here. And in here, what I want to do is I want to say like, hey, if segue.identifier equals, and then I'm going to paste the name that I typed in the last step, right? So if the identifier for the segue is, add to do segue, then we know that we're going to that scene, right, or that new view, right? So then what I want to do is I want to get the destination view controller. So I'm going to say, let, how about destination VC for view controller, right, equal, and the segue has a property called destination view controller. Okay, so that way we know that this is where we're going to go. It's our destination. And it doesn't like to give me this because it's like, hey, you know what? That we don't know what type this destination view controller is. But since we're doing the add to do segue, we know that it's in so I'm going to say as, and then we know that this is the add to do view controller. Okay, so I'm going to say, let's make destination view controller, right? Let's set it equal to a add to do view controller, right? So we're going to do destination view controller as add to do view controller. And then what I want to do is I want to say destination view controller dot delegate, right? Because now that we know that this is an add to do view controller, the computer knows that that guy has a delegate property, and we can set it to self. Okay, so hopefully that solves my problem that I had before. So now we're going to set the value of delegate to self, which is a reference to this view right here. Okay, let's test it one more time. Okay, so there's my list of to-do items. I'm going to click the plus button. I'll add a new to-do, which is going to be eat lunch. We'll say burgers and fries, right? And then I'll click save, and then I'll go back here, and there's eat lunch. Now, it didn't go back automatically. We got to add that too, but it did add a new item to our list, right? Let's fix that last bit. So the save button, right, when we tap it, so I'm in Add To Do View Controller, and I'm on the save button here, right? And we've created a new to-do. It doesn't have a segue, and we could actually add the segue here. You could just drag from this one to the other scene, and that would work. But why don't we do that a little bit differently here? So we'll do it programmatically. So what I'm going to do is, I want to tell our navigation controller to go back to the last view controller. And the navigation controller keeps track of which view controllers are displayed in an array. Okay, and so we can, if you push an item onto the array, it goes on the top, and that's the new view that we're viewing. And if you pop an item, it takes the last one off the top, and you go back to the previous one. So what we'll do here is we'll say navigation controller. So every view controller has a property called navigation controller, which is its navigation controller, right? If there is one, right? So we're going to talk to the navigation controller, and then I'll say dot. And what I want to do is I want to call pop, and there's a couple of these. It says pop to root view. That would go all the way to the bottom of the stack. And there's pop to view controller, and you can specify which view controller. And then there's also pop view controller animated, and that's the one that I want. So pop view controller animated says just pop the current view controller off the stack and go to the previous one, right? And then animated means, is it an animated transition? True. If it's not animated, false. Okay, so I'm going to put true in there because I want to do the animation. Okay, so it's going to be navigation controller, pop view controller animated. Okay, and I'll click test again, and we'll add a new to-do item. I'll call it eat. We'll just make this one short, snacks, right? And then I'll click save. And then there it pops my view controller, and then we see the new to-do down here. So there's a few more things I want to do with this. I want to save the information. You'll notice every time we reload it, the data is lost that we've added. And then also we want to, animate this maybe where you can click on this and show a check mark or something, right? So there's a few other things we'll do with this, but for right now we've gotten pretty far. So thanks for listening.